Hello and welcome to the Federal. You're watching our very special series of interviews which we have been conducting with various eminent guests to mark 100 years of the RSS, the Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh. As we all know, it is celebrating its centenary year. Now, today we are not going to be talking about the RSS directly, but about another very important institution which has had almost a parallel life. I am talking about the Gorakhpur based Gita Press, which is one of the largest public publishers in India of religious and other what they claim as spiritual books in the country. You can actually go around a large number of places in North India, and possibly there'll be very few places where you will not find a stall of the Gita Press. Even in very small remote corners, you will suddenly see a truck, which is made into some kind of a mobile shop all over around. Similarly, every railway station, every bus stand that you can think of, there is the Gita Press. I am going to be talking about the Gita Press and the RSS, about the separate but also one life, one pursuit, one goal in the last 100 years. So, and I'm going to be talking to Akshaya Mukul, who's a very senior journalist and an author who has written almost a decade ago. In fact, in 2014, if I'm not wrong, he wrote a brilliant book, much awarded book also, on the Gita Press and the making of Hindu India, Hindu right. So, welcome to this program, Akshay. Thank you very much for sparing time and talking with us on this very important series which we have been doing, looking at various diverse aspects of the Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh. So, as I said in the introduction, they have not had the same life, but 1925 was the year of the establishment of the Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh, and 1923 was the Gita Press. Thereafter, they have actually pursued similar objectives. I would like to understand from you that as to how do their paths converge, and how have they been separate or distinct from one another?
Uh, Thank you, sir. Thank you for having me. The thing with, as you rightly pointed out, it all starts in the first quarter of the 20th century. 1923 is Gita Press. 1926 is their main vehicle, their monthly journal called Kalyan, and
Yes.
RSS is in 1925. So it's like those 3 4 years are the years of fervent activity, um, in the establishment of what we know now as Hindu right wing. Of course, there was Hindu Mahasabha already and a few other organizations. So, as far as similarity and distinction, if we see right from the early 1930s, to be specific, with the signing of the Pune Pact, uh,
Hmm.
when Gita Press uh, and its founding editor of Kalyan, Hanuman Prasad Podar, gets into major argument with Gandhi on
Hmm.
caste, on temple entry, on interdining. Um, and since then, Gita Press, which claims, and to a large extent it does, it says it is working for bhakti, gyan, vairagya, kalyan, and other things. But at all flashpoints of history from 1926 onwards, they have there's been a choreography going on. Uh, between RSS, Gita Press, and similar other organizations. If we in 1940s, if we see again, Gita Press is at the helm of. It completely forgets that it is meant for Bhakti Jnana Vairagya, and it gets actively participates in politics for the 1940s, which is a very very intense period, very highly communal period, and it becomes a kind of vehicle to whatever Hindu Mahasabha and RSS were doing. What Gita Press did was brought Hinduism to of Hindutva variety to the ordinary Hindu homes, and it did it very well, and it did it under the guise, because see it, if we pick up a copy of Kalyan, which is
Mm.
has a huge circulation and continues to do so, is that it will
It
talk
also
of
has an
ordinary.
English. It also
Yes,
has an English version.
Kalyan Kalpataru, Kalyan Kalpataru. And so if you pick up a issue of Kalyan, you will find it talks of things like when to fast, when not to fast. It will have stories, very big moral stories of, the great deeds of children, women, men, and
Mm.
very well illustrated. So on the face of it, you will not think it's political at all, but it is highly political, which is actually contained in the very first editorial of Kalyan in 1926 August, the very first issue, where
Mhm.
Podar talks of everything, which is kind of has not changed at all. It's the ultimate template he gives, where he talks of Sangbal, where he creates this quote unquote otherness of Muslims, where he's talking of all these things. And since then, there's not been a single issue of Kalyan when there's been talked about cow, women, and whatever the
Mm.
politics has been at that time, and it continues to do so. And at every election, they have actively uh, till 2014 election, I remember they'll have something like "Vote Kisko De" for a journal which
Mhm.
claimed Bhakti Gyan Vairagya. This was really way off its original agenda. Yeah.
I just wanted to that if I'm not wrong, you also detailed out the contents of the first editorial of Kalyan, which you talk about 1926.
Yes.
It focused on communal riots and why do riots happen. They squarely
Yeah.
blame the Muslims, if I'm not wrong. And
Yeah.
as you
Yeah.
argued in the book, that it said that complete innocence of Hindus, and says that
Yeah.
Hindus also need to strengthen themselves.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is very
So
similar to what the RSS was also trying to do.
exactly.
The entire
So
purpose
the
was that.
Yeah, exactly. So what was happening is that there is this deep-seated inferiority complex which the editorial talks of, deep-seated inferiority complex of Hindus vis-a-vis Muslim men. And that reflects in various ways. They talk of how Islam, there is a sangbal, there is a unity of strength in
Sangbal,
Islam.
can you explain this word Sangbal?
He means unity of strength. So
Okay.
Podar's grouses that Hindus speak in multiple voices because there are multiple sects, there are multiple gods, there are multiple creeds, and we are never together. Look at Islam, which speaks in one voice, which
Mm,
speaks, and that gives the strength, and Hindus need to do that. And therefore,
mm,
when you were referring to the Muslims versus Hindus, so his
mm,
main thing is that become united, and therefore Gita Press became tried to become the sole spokesperson of the Hindus. So over a long period, it will never talk of multiple creeds, the Saivism and Vaishnavism. They will talk, but they will not talk of the distinctions. They will try to
mm,
present Hindus as one, as
mm,
as a united face, as one religion, and that
mm,
of course translates into the larger politics which we know as Hindutva. That choreography throughout happened, continues to do so, and see, another thing was that RSS or Hindu Mahasabha didn't have a vehicle whereby they'll reach ordinary Hindu homes.
right.
Kalyan was reaching ordinary Hindu home. Not everyone who was reading or is reading Kalyan is communal. No, not at all. But it was reaching, their point of view was reaching home through Kalyan. So we find, therefore, I was talking about flashpoints of history where their worldview gets to ordinary homes through Kalyan and continues to do so. Continues to do so.
Yeah, Gita Press is a publishing company. It's
Yeah.
a company that way. The Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh was set up essentially as an organization to unify, mobilize, and to strengthen Hindu society from within. Over
Yeah.
the last 100 years, it has actually emerged into really a hydra-headed organization which has
So,
close to about 100 organizations, by the Common Core, all kinds of things. And if you actually look at some of the latest data, they are in thousands spread across the entire globe that you can think of. In fact,
yeah.
very recently we did an interview with the scholar who actually plotted the international presence of the Sangh Parivar, that
Yeah.
we did that. Now, you have talked about the Gita Press as being some of the foot soldiers, as a foot soldier of the Sangh
Yeah.
Parivar. Now,
Yeah.
when we first started using in the 1980s, this phrase called the foot soldier, as reporters when we started writing, and then
Yeah.
various people wrote books in the early 90s. I also wrote a book at that
Mm.
particular time on the Ayodhya agitation till then, immediately after the demolition of the Babri Masjid. By foot soldiers, we essentially meant the Bajrang Dal type of people who are actually marching on the streets. Now,
Yeah.
your conceptualization of Gita Press uh, as a foot soldier is something completely different. Are you essentially talking about that the militancy is of ideas, the foot soldier is actually more of an intellectual kind? Is that what you are actually suggesting?
There are various aspects, like foot soldier is there is no uniform foot soldier. There is not only
Right.
one who is burning the mosques or chasing Muslims or killing them. There is, there are, Gita Press is not alone. There are various other organizations which uh, worked at the level of mind, the level of ideas, and brick by brick over 100 years built this superstructure which we know as Hindutva and its various political manifestations from Hindu Mahasabha, Jan Sangh to BJP now. So Gita Press worked at that level. Gita Press very quietly and very efficiently reached out Hindu homes and it influenced them in a very, very different way. It also did some remarkable things. It brought great Hindu texts like Ramayana or Mahabharata to ordinary Hindu homes at a very cheap price. It I don't know how common it was to know how Lord Rama would have looked like or how Sita looked like. It
Hmm.
is with a fine illustrations and very high quality production. They lured everyone. If you wanted, if you didn't have money to buy a big Gita or Hanuman Chalisa, they had Ramayan Gutka and they had Hanuman Chalisa and they had Sundar Kand, and all these things were complete. There was a great Marwadi enterprise that worked here, and they took it to ordinary Hindu homes at a very cheap price, and then there was politics thrown in Kalyan. There was huge politics thrown in, even in the moral stories that they were doing. So they were working at the level of mind, at the level of idea, of shaping mind, of telling them. They will talk of Birangana, Bir Balak, and somehow they will miss out the Muslims. They
Hmm.
will talk of great mothers and they will celebrate Hitler's and Mussolini's mother, and forget mothers of other great men and women. So these things were all happening very subtly, but they were happening consistently and they were persistent at it and it worked. I'll take a minute more. They were so kind of, you can say that, uh, you know, they were so convinced uh, that what they were doing was right, and the worldview that they wanted everyone to kind of adapt was, and so they were bringing out these some of these pamphlets, monographs. One monograph I'll mention, which is called Stri Dharm Prashnotari, which comes in 1926. It has done 100 years. It is still in circulation. It will beat every classics that we know of literature. And it is what? It is basically a conversation between Sarla and Savitri. Sarla is the simpleton, Savitri is the wise one who is telling Sarla how to lead life, basically telling women how to lead their lives within the four walls, how to bring up children. And if you bring up sons, how do you build nation? how to get a male child, how to, and how to also protect yourself from libidinous Muslim men. That has
Hmm.
not changed. So this is how they did. I'm just giving you one example. There are many other such pamphlets. Yeah.
Well, the only men of questionable character and morals, were the Muslims. I don't think that they
Yeah.
would have ever, positioned, that any Hindu man is capable of being anything like that.
Yeah.
Now, you talk about that when the Gita Press brought out several books, one of the basic objectives was to show the infiniteness, if I can use that word, of the Sanatan Dharma,
Yes.
that it's an
Yes.
eternal, religion which is always going
Yeah.
to, never going to get faded out, not going to get threatened by anybody. It has a, life which is continuous. Now, in the last few years, especially after 2019, we have from the Sangh Parivar various organizations, either the top guns of the Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh or the top leaders of the Bharatiya Janata Party also. They have been talking about and emphasizing, possibly for the first time uh, at such regular intervals, about Sanatan Dharma and becoming
Yes.
suddenly very very concerned about Sanatan Dharma being attacked by the adversaries of the Hindutva idea, and saying,
Yeah.
that this is something, which is, being critical of Sanatan Dharma is actually being critical of the nation, and definitely an unpatriotic act. Now, when you listen to these people, how much do you get reminded of what Hanuman Poddar edited and put it out? Are there very striking similarities in the basic argument, in the basic word words that they are using, the
Yes,
ideas?
I in fact laugh, I smile. I'll tell you, in fact, just now, I continue my subscription for some reason continues of Kalyan. So the
Of
100th
course.
issue of Kalyan, 100th year, centenary volume, just came home, and I was reading it out to my wife, and this is 2026, January, it came last month, and they have a whole article on Putra Prapti, not Santan Prapti. पुत्र प्राप्ति के लिए क्या क्या करना
On the
चाहिए.
on how do you get a son?
Yeah,
Huh?
male child. So this
Male
they
child.
were talking in 1926. This they're talking in 2026. So this comes from they're fully convinced. And when it started, see, it all started by a for a it was a kind of churning within Marwadi world that look, we have
Hmm.
money, we have everything, but we don't have respect. And the new modern and the modernity of the early 20th century is destroying our youth. They have started drinking, going to clubs, or mixing with women of of
Questionable
of
morals.
suspicious, yeah, questionable morals, because that's one thing that they were always trying to fix. They were running with this moral certificate all the time. So the way out, they thought, was, see, this is happening because of the bad influence of the long rule of the Muslims, followed by Christians, which is the Britishers. So the only solution for it is that let's go back to Sanatan Dharma. Therefore, you will find that even among Marwadis, communities are
Hmm.
not monoliths. So there is a whole stream of very, very liberal Marwadis led by people like Ghanshyam Das Birla, Jamna Lal Bajaj, and others who are very Gandhian and who don't agree with this worldview. They don't agree with this worldview. But the stream which was led by Mr. Podar and various others, it
Hmm.
was a community enterprise. See, what made it successful, because it was not a one man's venture. It was a Marwadi enterprise. It started as a trust, continues as a trust, headquartered in Calcutta. It makes it very clear that no lower caste can be member of the trust, still run by Marwadis, and it has run. It's probably the only journal and the only publishing house, religious publishing house of the first quarter 20th century, which continues to run on no profit, no loss basis. So yes, Sanatan Dharma. More I hear, nothing had changed. I was shocked. I was reading it to my wife, and she was saying, "What are you reading?" I said, "Yeah, listen to this. This is how you get a male
Hmm.
child." So this is 2026 centenary issue is talking about the same thing which they did in the 40s, 30s, and earlier period.
Now, Akshay, you are talking about the Sanatan Dharma. Now, in the last 4.5 decades, we've seen religion and politics and the interplay between them becoming a very major, dominant part of the social and political discourse in India.
Yeah,
Now, throughout this entire period, it's only in the last 5 years that we see such frequent mention of Sanatan Dharma and the argument that it is under danger, it is being attacked. Whereas
yeah,
if you actually look at the Hindu social scape, in the 80s and in the 1990s, you would find that people and very important groups like the Arya Samajis, they did not really become part of the Hindutva agitations, the movement, because they felt, that this was too Sanatani in approach,
yeah,
and they looked at Sanatani as they were idol worshippers, and the Arya Samajis would say that we do not believe in idol worshipping. So there is a fundamental difference, and their
yeah,
Hinduism is not our Hinduism. Why
yeah.
is it now everybody is looking at Sanatan Dharma as the only form of only vehicle of Hinduism in the country?
Because very simple, because they look at everything as like one, everything, this whole stress now in the last 10 years that we have found is that everything, one nation, one election, one religion. So one
Mm,
religion has to be the Sanatan version of it, not the thousands and thousands of versions of Hinduism that you and I know of. It helps pen. So you are fighting, you will find people in parts of India where some, we know that these things were not common. Suddenly people are fighting over it. So the whole
mm,
idea, the whole nation seems to be agitated about these symbols, this mazar, this mandir, the beef. So the entire nation is almost talking in one voice. So this is the larger idea of Hindi, Hindu, Hindustan. And when they talk of Hindu, they talk of one kind of Hindu. They don't like diversity of any kind. They don't like diversity of multiple faiths. They don't like within Hinduism have multiple faiths within Hinduism. They don't like that version, the strident version, the militant version. On smallest thing, I'll go and fight. I'll kill.
mm.
Just look at what is happening in Uttarakhand right now, or
Right.
Uttarakhand. Every 15 days there is something happen. Is it even worth fighting for? People coming, and where do you know in history you have written so much where a majority 80% population of a country is under threat from over 10% of the population? Where in the world does it even make sense? But people seem to be convinced that they are under threat. The religion is under threat, their women are under threat. God knows every day we are under threat. So this works. This works to have one version and just create that anger.
Mm.
Yeah,
Now, when you were talking about the centenary issue, I reread your book, just to, brush up my memory and to speak to you. So my attention was drawn to this mention which you made about the 1950 publication, which was first published in 1950, which is Hindu Sanskritic Ank of Kalyan, which is
yeah, yeah,
actually meaning that is the Hindu cultural issue of the Kalyan, which was actually compendium of 800 pages, which you say is of Hindu culture, and most importantly, leaving no aspect out of its
yeah,
purview. Sorry, that is
yeah,
what was written by you. Now, the RSS has always talked about, that Hindu we are talking about cultural nationalism. So, is this the idea of cultural nationalism as trying to be explained by the RSS or even earlier by Savarkar in his book, which actually inspired Hedgewar to a great extent to establish the Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh? So,
hmm.
how much of synchronization do you see in terms of their viewpoint?
Almost everything. Almost everything. See, just look at their views on women. Just look at their views on Islam. Just look at their views on RSS. will not get into. We haven't read, but at least I don't remember RSS talking about Kartik Purnima में ये उपवास करनी चाहिए और उस पूर्णिमा में ये करनी चाहिए. They will not. They will leave those things for organizations like Gita Press. But largely, they reflected this. There was absolutely no difference. In fact, it's funny that 19. If you look at the Hindu Mahasabha annual meeting in Gorakhpur sometime in 46, if I remember correctly, maybe 45, 46, something like that. The entire, whatever they discussed and whatever they were demanding for Hindustan, now that it was certain that there will be another country and Muslims would be leaving, they everything that they demanded comes in the pages of Kalyan. And Gita Press took it, was, as I said, they were trying to become the sole spokesperson of Hindus. So they were never talking of differences, even if there were differences. Only once I remember Sampurnanand, the chief minister, had written something and someone had put a rejoinder, but after one such debate, they just put an end to it. So at all aspects, except the ritualistic part, which RSS never got itself involved in, they had their own ritual of initiation and how that organization functioned. But the larger Hindu rituals, which Gita Press talked in great detail, and that was to lure women into it. And women are still the great readers. Even if they're not readers, someone in the family is reading out to them that this is what you have to do. Is mahine ye celestial positions this month is going to be like this.
So
Otherwise,
basically, the entire ritualistic observances are determined and
yes.
advised by
And that's
the Gita
where
Press.
their Panchang sells so much. The Gita Press calendar sells so much. Gita Press diary sells in lakhs and lakhs. So they created that union, and the larger political and social aspect of it, they were in sync completely with RSS and Hindu Mahasabha and
No,
others.
no, actually, your book is actually a very detailed critique of the contents of Kalyan magazine. I
Yeah.
really compliment you that you have actually brought something to the attention of the entire nation, which was missed by a large number of people who, journalists as well as scholars, who wrote on the Sangh Parivar in the 1980s as the agitation for the Ram temple gathered momentum. I was also one of them, and we essentially saw the Ram Janmabhoomi agitation as the primary vehicle of bringing the RSS and the BJP to where it is now, right from the 1990s onwards, the centrality, grabbing the centrality, the central space in Indian politics. Whereas the Gita Press had been, in a way, preparing the ground
Yes.
intellectually for several decades, and this was missed by everybody who did not actually go and look up the files of the Gita Press, did not
Yeah.
even think about it. Now, we have so far talked about, as I said, the intellectual basis of the Hindutva agitation. Now, let us talk about the direct involvement of the Gita Press into various issues which came up. And we
Yes.
could not, I would like to begin this entire section, just talking to Gita Press, Kalyan Magazine, Hanuman Prasad Poddar, and his, as well as the institutions, associations with those people who played a very central role in installing the idol inside the Babri Masjid, inside the functional mosque on the night of, a particular night in the 22nd, 23rd of
Yeah.
December 1949.
Yeah.
Prior to that, the entire conspiracy was laid out, and that's how it built. And one of the people who participated and contributed both in ideas as well as in resources was Hanuman Prasad Poddar, along
Yes.
with Digvijay Nath, Mahant Digvijay Nath, who was
Yeah.
the then the head of the Gorakhnath Peeth,
Mm.
whose spiritual successor happens to be Yogi Adityanath, who unfortunately, along with holding his religious position, continues to be the chief minister of Uttar Pradesh. This is one instance where one person is holding two positions, yet being
Yeah.
accepted by them.
Yeah.
So, tell us something about Hanuman Prasad Poddar and Ayodhya. the installation of the idol, and later
Uh,
on also the association, continuing
yeah. So
association.
Hanuman Prasad Podar is a, at one level, if you see it little dispassionately, he's a remarkable man. He can convince. If when I just think of an editor who can convince anyone to write, Premchand to write, he can
Right.
convince Nirala to send a very insipid poem because he can't say no to him. So there must have been something very remarkable. The
Even people
quality
who
of
are
a
not Hindus, you have a
even
separate
people
sub,
Syed
subsection.
Khan from Allahabad, who's a regular writer. There is Qasim Ali from somewhere in Madhya Pradesh. So there are all who they are Krishna Bhakts, rather Krishna Bhakts. So he can convince anyone to write. He's one of the longest serving editors. Is there for over 45 years, and
Yes,
he's
sir.
also very actively involved in politics. At one point, he wanted to quit Gita Press and join Salt Satyagraha, and Gandhi told him, "No, तुम भगवान का काम कर रहे हो, चले जाओ, तुम वहीं रहो."
Hmm.
So by and this was told to me by a very close someone you and I know, Ram Bahadur
Hmm.
Rai, he
Right.
told me that look, he had a proper recording of Nanaji Deshmukh telling
Just
him,
for the record, for the benefit of the viewers, I'll just stop. Ram Bahadur Rai, has been a very senior journalist. He's been closely
yeah,
associated with the Sangh Parivar, an
yeah,
association which he does not deny, which he does not hide,
yeah,
and
no, not at
is
all. He doesn't deny.
currently being nominated by this present government in the as in a very advisory chairperson, or a very senior advisory role in the Indira Gandhi National Center for Arts and Culture.
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
So he told me, ki, look, the what we know as the Nayar's wife and others and few other Mahants who went and installed idol, actually it was Hanuman Prasad Podar also. And he couldn't find the recording. So my thing was that how do I write just because you're saying it?
Correct.
He said, I will write it myself again, which he did in the journal he brings out, which I cite in the book, where he says that the idol installation that night, even Mr. Podar was there. And it's a fact in the records of Gita Press that the first fund for the construction of Ram Temple was started by Hanuman Prasad Podar with those days it must have been a big amount of 1,500 rupees. So
And this was
they
way
are
back
at the
in the 1940s and 50s.
Yeah, this is just after the so-called appearance of
Okay.
Ramlala. So he's there. He's very much involved with that thing. And then of course he had already earned name with Gandhi's assassination. All of them, he and Jayadayal Goenka, who was another founder, actually the main founder. So they were also rounded up along with thousands of others after Gandhi's assassination. Uh, and as Birla wrote to someone saying that मैं नहीं छुड़ाऊंगा क्योंकि शैतान धर्म सनातन धर्म नहीं शैतान धर्म कर रहे थे. तो and then he continues, when the Hindu Code Bill comes, they're at the forefront of taking it to ordinary Hindu homes. Every reader is asked that you send a postcard to the President of India that you are
Mm.
opposed to this Hindu Code Bill. And the arguments that we hear now when it comes to love jihad, exactly the same arguments are made on Hindu Code Bill. The argument being that it will lead to our girls marrying Muslim boys, libidinous. They will always talk of libidinous Muslim men, and they will marry, they will cook beef in our house, they'll violate our daughter and walk away with
And all
half
that is being
of our
done and
property.
alleged now in politics
Now, when
also.
it comes to love jihad, we hear the same argument, and you find that how things never change. And again, this whole Hindu Code Bill, and they also use Hindu Code Bill to talk about Ambedkar in most deplorable terms. They always
Mm.
call him Heen Varna Ambedkar.
Mm.
So and they blame Ambedkar for this idea of Hindu Code Bill, and of course Nehru, and they actively participate. So it was a religious publishing house actively participating in politics in Phulpur in 1951 election.
Mm.
Prabhudat Brahmachari contests against him, and their main thing is just ban cow slaughter, and they also
Hindi.
propagate that Nehru eats beef, all
Hindi.
kinds of, and Hindu
Hindi
quote
is Rashtriya Bhasha.
Hindi as Rashtra Bhasha, Bhagavad Dhwaj, all kinds of things. So and the pages of Kalyan are full of them. Vote किसको दें और क्यों प्रबुद्धत ब्रह्मचारी को वोट देना चाहिए, and that they carry till subsequent election. I saw it 2014. Now I don't see it that regularly. 2014 election. I write in the epilogue of that book that in
Right.
2014 they said that now finally the Hindu Rashtra is here. This is the first time that on its own majority a Hindu party has come to power, and let's celebrate it, and let's now finish the agenda which was habit for 100 years.
Yes, you talk, about Ayodhya, but let's talk about the two other most important shrines which are on the, quote unquote, on the hit list of the Sangh Parivar, which is Mathura, the Krishna Janambhoomi, so-called Krishna Janambhoomi, and of course, the Gyanvapi Mosque in Varanasi.
Mm.
How was the Gita Press involved in promoting the Sangh Parivar's agenda on these two temples also?
Yeah,
And others
Mathura,
also.
I write about Krishna Janmabhoomi.
Yes.
They're agitating about Krishna Janmabhoomi. They're saying what is, I mean, it's an eyesore to see
And they have
Krishna
been doing
Janmabhoomi like this.
agitating right from the 1950s onwards, right?
Yes, they do. Gyanvapi Mosque, off and on, they have been talking, but not so much as they were talking about Ram Janmabhoomi and Krishna Janmabhoomi. Krishna Janmabhoomi, they are very invested in. And almost, again, taking what RSS wants, that argument to ordinary Hindu homes through Kalyan. So Kalyan is the ultimate vehicle they have.
You know, what we need to understand is that in today's, I'm trying to move towards the closure of our conversation. We have had the Gita Press, which is 103 years old now, 2026, established in
Yeah.
1923, and the RSS 100 years we are now marking. And the BJP is in power at the moment. There does not seem to be a very great risk at the moment of losing elections. At least in 2029, they are constitutionally in power, unless they, of course, deserted by all the allies who are with them, and they get reduced to a parliamentary. They do not any longer have a parliamentary majority. So, in this particular, in today's India, what kind of a role is the Gita Press playing, or is likely to play within the in a short run?
See, there are dangers, and this is something which editor of Kalyan, Radhesham Khemka, he's no more. He told me कि they had this plan to change according to times, and when I say change according to times, they mean in terms of the kind of Hindi which is there in uh, the Kalyan. That Hindi is very difficult.
Hmm.
That Hindi cannot be understood. They wanted to simplify it, so that they have to kind of that's the kind of the danger part. But since there is a overall uh, what we call the ecosystem, there is a Hindu ecosystem, so the press as it is not under threat. It still has a circulation. The problem is, which worries me again, is that when I was telling you that the centenary issue of Kalyan is talking about how to do putra prapti.
Hmm.
I then I'm kind of little worried that someone somewhere is reading it. When I see Nari Ank and Hindu Sanskriti Ank getting reprinted year after year after year, so someone somewhere in 2026 is reading it, because Gita Press is no profit, no loss venture. It's not that it's entirely loss venture. So let's
Hmm.
not underestimate the intelligence. So someone is reading it. So those things are still very relevant for them, and it seems there is a constituency for it, and that's what makes Gita Press relevant. Those things are being read. 20, who is reading it? Who will follow the steps that they talk about for Putra Prapti? I'm sure
Hmm.
people are doing it. I'm sure it's a
Yes,
big thing.
certainly. That is what
it's a huge
actually
thing.
explains the abortion, continuing abortions
we
of a
yeah.
large number of female fetus.
Yeah, so we continue to live in our own bubble, but there is a world out there which fully believes in it, is convinced of those rituals, and they continue to do so. And that's what makes it relevant. And I think that will continue to make them relevant for a long, long time. I don't see that going away. Yeah.
Relevant and extremely worrisome. Thank you, Akshay
Yeah.
Mukul, for this wonderful conversation where you actually walked us through a parallel path of the Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh, which was
Yeah.
ignored for a great time till your fascinating book with all the details. I would
Thank
say
you.
that your book has been is 10 years old, but it still has a lot of relevance. And I would
Yeah.
actually, like all the viewers to actually reach out for your book. Thank you very much for
Thank
talking
you.
on this
Thank
very
you. Thank you
important
for
issue.
having me.